When we think about the story of Jesus, we often picture these peaceful villages and quiet teachings. But there's this huge shadow looming over every single moment. So today, we're going to explore how one of the most powerful empires in history literally shaped a story that would end up outlasting it. So let's just start with this one big question. What if the story we all know so well was deeply influenced not just by faith, but by the hard political, military reality of the Roman Empire? Because that empire was all about, well, first and foremost, overwhelming power. We're talking legions, governors, and laws that reached every single corner of the known world. It was an empire of taxes, heavy, constant taxes, all collected for a distant Caesar. And this created real, day-to-day economic hardship for ordinary people. And yeah, an empire of fear. Things like public punishments and soldiers patrolling the streets were this constant reminder of exactly who was in charge. This was the air that people breathed. So to really get the message, you first have to get the world it was spoken into. Let's start by looking at what life was really like under Roman occupation. You gotta understand, Roman authority was everywhere. This wasn't some distant power, it was a daily reality. Soldiers on your street corner, tax collectors knocking at your door, and a governor whose main job was to serve the empire's interests, not the local people's. Now, this is where it gets really interesting, how the power was structured. Sure, you had local rulers like Herod the Great, and he did big things like build the Jerusalem temple. But don't get it twisted. He was what you'd call a client king. His power was totally dependent on staying on Caesar's good side. Rome held all the real cards, the military, the final legal say, and of course, those imperial taxes. And this right here shows you just how much Rome shaped the story from the very beginning. The birth of Jesus in Bethlehem, that wasn't just a coincidence. It happened because the emperor Caesar Augustus ordered a census. A Roman administrative decree literally set the stage for one of the most pivotal events in all of history. Okay, so let's see how this all feeds into the core of Jesus's ministry. When you have a land suffering under occupation, people are, desperate for a savior. But the savior they got was definitely not the one they were expecting. The public was longing for a Messiah who was a military leader, right? A political revolutionary who would finally drive out the Romans and make Israel free again. But Jesus started talking about a completely different kind of kingdom, one not built with swords, but with radical love and mercy. He came to defeat fear, not an empire. So think about it. When Jesus said, "Blessed are the peacemakers," that wasn't just some nice, gentle proverb. In a land that was simmering with rebellion and filled with Roman soldiers, this was a radical, totally countercultural, and a deeply political statement. It flew right in the face of what everyone expected. And look, he didn't ignore the political reality. He engaged with it head on. His famous teaching about giving to Caesar what is Caesar's was a brilliant answer to a trap question. It cleverly acknowledged the political authority of the day while pointing to a higher, more important spiritual one. Well, this clash between a spiritual kingdom and a political empire, it was inevitably going to lead to Jesus' death. And the method of that death, it tells us everything we need to know about who held the real power. And here's the crucial point. Crucifixion wasn't a local punishment. It was a signature tool of Roman state terror. It was designed to be a public, agonizing spectacle to warn anyone else who might even think about challenging Rome's authority. And if you just look at the steps leading to the cross, it's a political playbook. Sure, local leaders made the accusation, but the legal authority, that was all Rome. Jesus stood trial before the Roman governor, Pontius Pilate, and the key question Pilate asked was political. Are you a king? Any claim to kingship was a direct threat to Caesar. So the final sentence? It didn't come from a religious court. It came from a Roman official. But this is where the story flips on its head in the most incredible way. An empire's ultimate weapon of fear was transformed into the world's greatest symbol of hope. I mean, that's the ultimate irony, isn't it? The Roman cross was meant to be the final word. It was a public declaration of the empire's absolute power to crush anyone who got in its way. But instead, it became the ultimate symbol of self-sacrificial love and redemption. So, what's the final verdict from history? Well, it's pretty clear. The Roman Empire was vast, loud, and seemed all-powerful, but in the end, it was temporary. The words of Jesus were quiet, spoken to small crowds, but they turned out to be eternal. The empire is gone, but the message that was born in its shadow is still here. So we'll leave you with this final thought. Looking at the world through this lens, it kind of makes you wonder, What are the empires of our own time? What seems all-powerful and permanent today, but might just be a passing shadow in the long story of history?